Hello, I'm speaking with Councillor Ian Gilbert, leader of Southend Council, who's written the political viewpoint article for the June 29th edition of the Leigh Times. Hello Ian, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad at all, thank you. You've focused your political viewpoint article on the controversy of the government targets for around 23,000 new homes over the next 20 years. Um, you start by saying that we've not built enough houses for many years, and you go on to say you very seldom opposed new housing. With your history, would you like to explain a bit about what's going on, please?
Well, I mean, I think as a country, we've not built enough houses. Supply has lagged behind demand, hence why, over the past, 10, 20 years, we've had this massive overheating of the housing markets. Here in Southend, as I said, I've always tried to be supportive of new housing projects which are appropriate, and I've very rarely opposed housing, and I've certainly never opposed housing for the sake of it. But the targets are, enormously challenging, challenging to the point of impossibility, some people might say. It's several. It translates to several times per annum more than we've actually delivered over the course of the last 20 years. And if we do have to meet those targets, then there's no option which won't end up upsetting quite a few people. I think that's the bottom line.
Am I right in thinking the population of Southend Borough at the moment is around 70,000?
I think it was about 170,000. I think,
Yeah.
and that's probably that's probably an underread. We're still waiting for the new for the figures from the census that was conducted a few months ago. I suspect we're going to be around 200,000.
Right. Okay. Well,
When
23,000 new properties could easily equate to an extra 50,000 people, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
Um,
There's always the question of where people are. Are they going to be? Some of them will be new people from the area. That's that's going to happen. But obviously, there's also the issue of people who are currently living in overcrowded or unsuitable accommodation. Lots of lots of children still living with their parents who'd like to get onto the housing ladder. So we're not necessarily talking about that influx of new people, but that very much depends on the type of housing, the tenure, and so on.
You say that a lot of properties have been converted, old office blocks, without the council's say so, and that you dearly wish the government would have given more thought to local infrastructure. I take it that's doctors, the hospital, all that kind of stuff, traffic, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult for us in terms of health services, and I know that this is a big worry for people when we talk about new developments. Health services are provided by the NHS, obviously not the council. So, whilst the NHS have plans and policies, and we do challenge on them to meet what's the expected demand, it often seems that what people experience isn't, is that, is increased pressure on services and finding it harder to get what they need. But that's not unfortunately, that's something that's not within the council's responsibility. But we can use planning contributions for roads. Schools, of course, is a council responsibility. We have to plan to make sure that we've got enough school places and public amenities generally.
You say the council can't simply ignore the housing targets, otherwise you'd be subjected to intervention. So you've got to effectively deal with this. Is there any way to get this number changed?
Well, obviously there's a planning bill promised in the autumn. You know, it's the government instruction is for councils to carry on with the current process, but it's certainly possible that that bill could change things. All the signs suggest that it won't actually change things for the better. But you know, I think it's nevertheless, you know, it's our job to say to government quite clearly that, well, if they insist on these targets, then you know it will require us having to make some really difficult choices.
And one of those is building on greenbelt land, which is obviously instantly controversial locally. Um, do you put forward in your article that you've counted up already the number of developments that are got planning permission or are set to go ahead. There's an outstanding number of 10,000 short of the government targets. And one of the things that you're talking about is a new garden community on the border of Southend and Rochford, which would be green belt land. Reading through your article, I sense that that's what you feel is probably the smartest outcome. Is that right?
Well, I mean, when there was a consultation for the previous stage under the previous Conservative administration, something like 80% of the responders said that they would rather have a managed new development rather than just simply building denser, building higher in our existing areas. In practice, it's going to have to be a mix of the two. But as I said, you know, there have been a call sites. You know, council has gone out and asked people, consulted very widely on where it may be possible to build more houses. And as I said, those have already been factored in, and we're still a way short. So my personal opinion is that we're not going to get anywhere near the target unless, if this is the target, other than by doing it. But but you know, we're out to a consultation. So if more sites come forward, if people come up with better ways in terms of how we can meet those figures, then you know we're absolutely going to consider it, because nobody, not me or anybody else in the administration, wants to build on greenbelt if there's a better option.
I mean, the punchline of your article is, with that in mind, I urge all residents to engage with the consultation process with an open mind. So you're very keen to have people put forward ideas. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. And also stress again that this the local plan isn't just about housing. Housing is obviously the controversial, well, the most controversial bit, but it's also about employment lands. It's about high streets. It's about environmental standards. It's about a whole range of things which you know will affect you know the way the borough looks and feels and works for the next 20 or 30 years. So I'd urge people to look at it in the round, as well as just the housing issue.
Can I just get you to explain what the local plan is and what power it gives you? If you've got the government saying you must do this, whatever your local plan says has got to conform to that, hasn't it? But how does it give you tools that you can use to end up with what's best for Southend?
Well, the main point of it will be any so unless something completely changes in the planning system as part of the planning bill, which which we can't rule out, but all planning applications, anybody who wants to build anything or change of use, change building use, will be judged. Well, it's judged against the national framework, but it's also judged very much against the local plan. So this will, guide Development Control Committee in terms of its decision, and the council officers in terms of their decisions on what's built, what uses are allowed in which areas, what character of building we'll be looking for, what sort of standards we'll be setting, all those sort of things. And it's got to be for it to come into force, it will have to go through the planning inspectorate. They'll have to say that yes, this plan conforms to the national rules on local plans, which is where you get judged against whether you've made sufficient effort to meet those targets. But if we don't have a sound plan, then developers will be able to far more easily take the council to appeal and win. So we could have a situation where councillors, this already happens, but it could happen to a much greater extent, that local decisions would just end up being overturned in favour of the developer, sort of willy-nilly.
So it would enable the council to guide more firmly where the town ends up. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, we'll have to see what comes out of the planning bill, but that is the position. And it's an ongoing process. Obviously, we have planning policies in place, but they are increasingly old, out of date, and so we have to update those for the new framework. But yeah, it is a really important document.
You say that people who say we could find more brownfield sites are being disingenuous. What do you mean there?
Well, I mean, for example, when I was pushing back on some Conservative councillors who said we shouldn't even be considering the green belt option, and I asked them, okay, what other ideas can you come up with? They were saying, well, one of them said to me, well, you can bring those empty buildings on Victoria Avenue back into use, but actually almost all the offices on Victoria Avenue are already converted to housing. There's only I think 2 still as offices, one in the process of being built. That's already counted in the figures, and it seems that whenever somebody suggests a site that's suitable, actually it's one that's already counted and already there within those within those targets, and it's not a new suggestion.
You said, does 50 new tower blocks scattered around the borough or crammed into the town centre sound like a good idea? Is that a realistic possibility?
Well, I think that was a question rather than a statement. I said, is it a good idea? Because that seems to be where if people are, if one, people accept that we have to try to meet the targets, but 2, people are going to rule out the building on the open land, then that seems to me where we end up. And no, personally, I don't think that's a good idea. So as I said, it's a consultation, and I'm very happy to listen to people's views, and I hope people do come forward with new options. But it's that sort of indiscriminate building at height in places where it's completely out of character that I want to avoid.
Okay, is there a point we haven't covered? Is there anything particular that you would like to say that we haven't spoken about here?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. As I said, it's a really important document just for housing, but for a whole variety of other issues within the borough. And I hope people engage with it positively.
And presumably they go to the Southend website or Southend Council's website to do that, do they?
Yes, I dare say it'll be disseminated by other means as well, but I expect the online portal will be the most important. So the decision to go out to consult is still working its way through the council, so it's not there just yet,
Right.
but it certainly will be over the summer.
Brilliant. Well, unless there's anything you think we've missed, I think that I've got plenty, and I appreciate your time.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.